going to continue to crisscross South Africa and find out how voting is going. In a short while, we'll be going back to the Eastern Cape. But I want to just have a quick conversation with Susan Booysen, who's been with us during this broadcast, analysing some of the results that have already come in. Susan, again, thanks so much for being with us. You know, we need to look to the parties. We had already started speaking about those parties that have been there, you know, since the dawn of democracy, and then in 1999, and now we're suddenly seeing massive drops in the votes that they're getting. And some of the parties that we're looking to, particularly, let's focus on COPE for now.
Yes.
COPE, I mean, it was massive. It got 30 seats in 2009.
Yes.
Then last year it was sitting with 3 seats. And looking at how they're doing now, they're sitting on 9,082 votes.
Yes.
Still early days, but they don't even have a single seat. I mean, let's talk to COPE.
That is kind of one of the phenomena that came with history, with the exit of Mapungubwe and ANC, and split there, and people gradually migrated back to the ANC, often under great pressure from ANC and recruiting people who had gone to COPE back into the ranks of the ANC, and that has been the story. And so, but those people have diffused. Typically when South African political parties dissolve, quite a number of other smaller parties get their votes again. Sometimes they go back in, like the case in COPE, went back into the ANC. So that's one of those stories of a piece of history that unfolded and it faded.
Yeah.
And new histories are in the making. But so far, it is those established smaller opposition parties that seem to be pushing into the lower ranks below the big three or so of the ANC, the DA and the EFF.
Yeah, very interesting. I like you saying that history is being made here, and that's with those other parties coming in and taking off from, or taking over from what used to be those parties that we'd always look out for and see how they're performing. And another one, we spoke a little bit about the UDM. UDM in 1999 sat with 14 seats in the National Assembly. There was a 71% drop in their support when it came to the elections in 2014.
Yes.
They only landed up getting 4 seats. Now it remains to be seen if they even get 1 seat in these elections. That's the UDM.
Exactly. It's in a similar trajectory to COPE. It was also a split from the ANC. It was going to be a more non-racial party, bringing Rolf Meyer and those pieces of history into it. And then it went more the African nationalist route from internally in the UDM. But faded. Small political parties have dismal prospects in South Africa unless they get their teeth in and they mobilize an identifiable constituency, like we're probably seeing in the case of the Freedom Front Plus.
Yes.
And remember those historical roots. It was the old Conservative Party that threatened the National Party in the pre-1994 days, that was making inroads into the National Party support in those dark old days.
Yeah.
But they also kind of regrouped, and now it seems that. But it's interesting, makes an interesting point about the DA, because in previous election, many of the previous Freedom Front Plus supporters had gone to the DA. And I think with the DA repositioning very much for a Black African constituency, and I think the DA current performances indicate that it has maybe been making small inroads, insignificant small inroads into the Black African support base. But then some of the more conservative, and it's probably right to say white supporters in the DA have now been migrating out of the DA again back to the Freedom Front. And that's how the Freedom Front's been profiling itself.
Well, I mean, the Freedom Front Plus already is sitting at 81,921 votes. So if we're looking at, we're sitting there with almost 2 seats in the National Assembly. They've sat comfortably with 4 seats. For a while now.
Yes,
they dropped, but now they seem to have stabilized. They have their support base, which tend to keep going back to them. So this is an interesting one, the Freedom Front Plus to watch.
It is certainly, yes.
Yeah.
And the newcomer, good, already moving towards, they will probably get a seat or 2.
Yes.
They will be in Parliament.
They will be. I want to talk to the IFP as well. The
Yes.
IFP, now, we know the IFP stronghold in KZN. They unfortunately had a big wobble over the years. If we look back to 1999, the IFP used to sit with 34 seats in the National Assembly. They then had a major drop. In 2004, they had 10 seats. They dropped that number. 71% drop. And that, of course, was what was happening with the breakaway faction of the NFP.
Yes.
But the IFP now, they're holding strong. What are you looking at for the IFP? I think they're sitting, we had them up on the screen now, but already they've got 1.47% of the national vote there.
Yes, and there's no doubt they will be in Parliament, and they will be represented there quite significantly, probably a bit higher by current early indications than they had been in the past. They had been, historically the KwaZulu-Natal province lagged a bit behind the rest of South Africa, and in the last two elections, KZN had actually been boosting the ANC national support levels, because that province still showed ANC proportions of the vote growing, whereas in other provinces it had stopped doing that. And if a growth in the IFP at this stage will also indicate that the ANC is making fewer inroads there, and is possibly a decline in votes overall in KwaZulu-Natal. We know that there is a huge number of voting districts that have to declare in KwaZulu-Natal. But the ANC has stopped making those inroads, and the NFP came in as a project. Some people have said possibly an ANC encouraged project. Previous elections, and they made inroads, significant ones at first, but then it lapsed again. And now it's virtually a non-existent party, and the IFP is regaining from that base what it had lost there, and possibly regaining a bit from the ANC support over the years. But almost the most important bottom line is that the ANC cannot count on KwaZulu-Natal for growth anymore. And it's not just the inter-party dynamics, but also the intra-party dynamics. The provincial result there is going to be fascinating, because we'll see whether small parties had been picking up more of the possible ANC internal dissident vote. Zuma's, for example, not wanting to support this, the Ramaphosa ANC. So we're going to see those dynamics playing out in the next few hours.
So let me talk to the provincial results now. As I've got on my screen right now, you can see the ANC have 92,309 votes. This is in KZN. That's 54% of the vote. IFP, 36,024. That's 21% of the vote. And then the DA have 21,477 votes. That's 12.6% of the vote.
It will be fascinating to see whether IFP at provincial level possibly eclipses the DA.
That would be very interesting to see. One last conversation I want to have before we go over to our reporter Zimkita, who's in Mthatha, the ATM. Looking at their number here, the African Transformation Party, at this point on the national elections, they have 0.4% of the total vote, sitting at 10,569. They are fast coming up, and
on
about to push.
0.4% means they've already got one MP in there.
Look at that. Now, the ATM is a fascinating party to watch.
It is. We know they've also been discontent. What was their African Transformation Movement? What was the African Transformation Congress? We've even seen a court case in the last 2 weeks, people trying to claim ownership of that and accusing others of hijacking the party. But it is a force that is counting on strong church, religious affiliations movement, those people being mobilized to come into the ATM. And at this level, 0.4% at this stage, so there is that connection into the church faith missions, apostolic faith missions, etc. That has been working for that party in that province, because it's new, it's looking at small breakthroughs. And yes, so that and ATM and Good are the two new parties that are possibly at national level displacing the COPEs and the UDMs as that part of history.
Yeah, well, let's now move over to the Eastern Cape, because this is where the fascinating picture comes in. We can see in the Eastern Cape for the voting districts, the ATM are sitting just below the UDM at 6,427 of those results that have come in, 1.26% of the vote. And the voting in the rural parts of the Eastern Cape was generally peaceful, and that's what some of the reports that are coming through are saying, you know, except for isolated incidents in Ntabankulu and Elliotdale. Now, in Ntabankulu, the Nhlangano voting station